Hello, everybody. This is Stacey Campbell, and I'm so happy to be talking to you today. I feel like this is such an important message that we're bringing forth today on the family. The family is under very much increased pressure in these days of coronavirus. Here we are, we're all locked in with our families. There's great blessings to come from that, great benefits that can come from that, reconnecting, spending more time with each other. But there's also a lot of pressure in that. And, this morning I was reading and it says that the cases have topped 2.1 million people worldwide. And that's just this morning. It's increasing. It's not going down yet. And it's hit the entire world. Most churches have stopped gathering as of 5 weeks ago. Almost 150,000 people have died worldwide. In America alone, there are 675,000 cases and 33,318 deaths as of this morning. So that's like a lot of pressure. It is creating fear everywhere. And not only that, 22 million Americans have lost jobs and applied for employment insurance. And the financial pressures actually bring increased marital pressures and increased family pressures. I read a book years ago. I believe it was in the book called His Needs, Her Needs. And it talked about that financial pressures are one of the greatest causes of marital breakup. It just adds so much stress onto a family. So we wanted to come to you today and just talk about how, in the context of isolation, how in the context of being in a socially distanced world, how can we keep the connections of those that are closest to us, our loved ones? And I have a wonderful panel of friends and skillful people. And these are some of the greatest people that I know on this topic. And we have a good friend of mine called Diane Arnold. She's a marriage and family therapist. And Diane, why don't you come on and just explain who you are and what you do and where you come from?
Hi, Stacey. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for allowing me to be with you today. I am a marriage and family counselor, and I have been married for 38 years, and I have 3 amazing young men, and 2 of them are married to beautiful young women. And we are family people. My husband and I have written a book about our colossal marriage mess. And we have written a marriage manual, and we just completed a new program called Creating Connection, which was something that God laid on our hearts a couple of years ago that is very significant to what's happening, in our culture right now.
Awesome, Diane. And Diane, what are the names of your books? Do they have,
Do they have names? Yeah. Yes, our main book is called Take Heart, and actually that's using psychology principles and the Bible to restore whenever you've been, what I say, upside down, wherever life gets you a hit, and it's about getting both your identity and inheritance back in your life. And then the marriage manual Face to Face is more of a workbook that you can use in a community setting.
Awesome. Well, we're excited to hear from you later in the program, just on the principles that you have learned from being married 38 years and also from your professional skills. So, and next we have the world famous Danny Silk. Now, Danny, you have specialized in keeping your love on. You have specialized in like loving on purpose, intentional walking towards relationships for decades. And, you've written a number of books on that, but tell us a little bit about who you are, where you come from, and why you do what you do.
Hi, Stacey. Thanks for having me here. This is a great idea. Way to go. I don't know, 25 years of helping people in crisis, in social work, in domestic violence, in foster children, adoptive parents, you name it. It's there's just been lots of practice there. Pastor for 20 of those years, worked with Bill Johnson, Chris Valentin, and the whole Bethel Church executive team for almost 15 years, with Jesus Culture now, and doing a lot of work with Banning and that team. The practice of being married has given me probably the greatest education I've ever had, I could have wished for, So, and then raising children and all that. I wrote a book called Keep Your Love, not Keep Your Love On. That's the name of yes, I did write a book about Keep Your Love On. Loving Your Kids on Purpose was the first book that we wrote. That was really what we spent most of our time doing was parent training, and then Culture of Honor. That was the next real kind of the Trojan horse that I'm trying to usher into families. It's Culture of Honor. It's like, how do we live together and still be powerful people instead of somebody having to disappear? Because I hate fear. I hate it. It just is such a killer. And like you introduced this whole thing, this is the war is really between love and fear. And so how do we find a way to exalt love and chase away fear? I just want to direct people to the lovingonpurpose.com website. There's an assessment you can take in the upper right-hand corner. It'll list out the resources. We have an overwhelming number of resources. So we just want to set you on a path to relational success. And then we have the Life Academy, which is online courses. And we have an offer coming up at the end that'll really help people get access to that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Danny. And lastly, I want to introduce to you a good friend of ours for over 20 years. They were elders in our church. They started a house of prayer. But Jazmin Friesen is a homeschool mom of 5. She's homeschooled her kids at different seasons, but she's also a teacher, and she's an online school teacher currently. She has been a teacher at a Christian school in the past. So she's an educator to help you with your kids. And what do you do when you're stuck at home with 5 kids? Like I have 5 kids, and so and they're all like running around. And how do you, some practical ideas? I've asked her to give some of that, but Jazmin, give us a little bit about your guiding factors, your motivating things. You've just been so successful in your marriage and children, and you're a real model to me. Like I look at you and I go, wow, I want to be like Jazmin when I get younger.
Right.
Quite a bit younger.
Thank you so much for having me here today. Like Stacey said, I have 5 children, ages ranging from 7 to 14. I'm married to a wonderful husband. We live here in Kelowna. And I just want to say, when I started my homeschooling journey, it was actually never the dream of my heart. I never pictured myself to be a homeschool mom. In fact, I didn't feel very domestic. I didn't necessarily love to cook or bake or clean. These weren't the dreams of my heart, but I felt God interrupt my plans and really place it on my heart to do this. And so I kind of did it kicking and screaming at first. And so I might be like many of you out there that find yourselves, isolated together as a family, and you're like, I didn't choose this. But I want to say that if I can do it, you guys can do it. And I've learned, that it's just such a wonderful experience to be home with your family, to build those strong foundations. Perspective in this time is really key. You only have a few short years together, maybe let's say 18, 20, to live with your children, and it's going to be gone in a blink of an eye. And so in that context, this time of being together in isolation can be a time of pure gold. And we just need to see it as a blessing and a gift. And so I'm here to just encourage you, give you some practical tips, maybe some fresh perspective, and hopefully help you guys through the next few months or however long this pandemic lasts. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And, Diane, I'd like you to spend a little bit of time now, because I've had a number of conversations with you where you actually talk so much about connection and the importance of connection. And, you say things like, we are wired for connection, but when you throw everybody in the house and force connection, tell us what that does to our brains. Tell us how do we survive, in these scenarios that we're not used to, that put a lot of pressure on the relational aspect. Tell us, what have you learned?
Awesome. Thank you, Stacey. Well, a couple of years ago, my husband and I started telling you guys about this before. We started looking around at the decline of connection, in our society. In my counseling practice, almost every day, I'm constantly hearing, I'm lonely. I feel rejected. People don't like me, And we were wondering, at a time that there's more ways to connect than ever before, how could so many people be in that really stuck place? And so it kind of became our mission to look at the issues and kind of research and see what the experts were really saying about what was going on. So what we found out was 2 in 5 Americans report that they feel socially isolated, that they don't feel like they have good relationships. That actually in a national survey, I think it was less than a year ago, 47% of us said that we felt alone or left out. And that's a huge number. I mean, all that's happening before we have the isolation, of COVID. So we believe that this, along with you, this panel of experts, that this time of distancing is a huge opportunity for us to make a dent in those numbers, right? I mean, social research tells us that both positive and negative experiences are what shape our brain, our child's development, that they can have lifelong effects before we're even 1 year old. And many of us are struggling because we're missing some of those experiences from a long time ago. But many of us are struggling right now because we're stuck in a place right now where we don't have the ability to have connection. Yet we know, every one of us knows, that humans feel more secure when we have a relationship, when we have other people around. It's been proven time and time again that whether we're sick, whether we've had a loss, whether we've had trauma, whether we're celebrating, biologically, biochemically, we do better when we have people with us. Bottom line, humans don't do well alone. In fact, another study said that we have the same pain with a social distance that you have when you're hungry or you're thirsty. And our power to bond with these connections improves the quality of our life, boosts our mental health, helps us live longer, literally can decrease depression and anxiety, as well as has physical benefits to our health. So it makes sense why this time, these restrictions are so hard on most of us, and some of us more than others. Many of us, like you said, have never lived in a world where we have this prolonged exposure to our spouses, to our families. I've talked to couples who are fighting over the last cup of coffee, or who's going to make the next cup. Or I had one wife tell her husband, that she was going to write him up for insubordination in the kitchen. It's interesting, what we're trying to do. And we know it's all been hard. And so we're looking for constructive ways, to deal with this. Has anyone ever heard out there of something called an EQ, or emotional quotient? Yeah. There's a new one out there, an IQ, an irritability quotient. It's like, how many adjustments and adaptations can you make before you lose it, before the annoyance and the aggravation takes out in your house? And that conflict right now is real. Stacey, what you were talking about, more of us are experiencing this kind of stress in our homes. Experts are telling us we're going to have to get creative. We're going to have to deal with boundaries. So I want to mention a couple of those challenges, all right? So China has reported in the last little bit that there was a huge surge of divorce filings right after, their COVID. Worldwide lockdowns have increased domestic violence. That number is actually up by 22%. In England, they reported 150% increase in the calls to their hotlines. In France, they reported an increase of 36% police intervention.
Wow.
They did something really interesting. They have given the entire country 20,000 rooms, hotel rooms. So if someone calls in, they're giving someone a space that they can go for a night or two, which is amazing. But again, it's just telling us that the reactions to this are hard, and we don't know exactly, like Danny said, the fear is high. We don't know how we're going to be, impacted, but people are overwhelmed. So I want to just mention a couple things to watch for in your home. All of the people on this call know, as therapists, we're always saying we have ability to have positive coping and we have an ability to have negative coping. And it's some of the negative coping, that's taken over some of the homes right now. We have, a trap in our brains to temporarily turn off emotions when they're not good. And instead of, going for a run or doing something a little more healthy for us, people have kind of turned to food. Well, I have at my house. We have definitely eaten a lot here, but there's been an increase in alcohol. There's been an increase in drugs, gambling, video gaming, and a huge increase in porn. How about blame and projection? That's what you were talking about with marriages. When life is out of control, we want someone else to fix it sometimes. And so blaming others, getting in arguments has had a huge increase. One I want to mention, and I don't want any, yelling or feedback, but panic buying and hoarding. Often that's done out of fear, that there's going to be a lack. And we want to encourage each other to have faith, that our Lord is our covering and that he has our protection right now. And like we talked about, there's been a huge increase in violence and aggression. So I would just say, I think all of us would say, if you are struggling with any of these things, or any harmful thoughts, we have provided a whole list of hotline numbers. I think they're probably going to put that up. It will also be on our Facebook page, the Family Collective. We have a nonprofit that you can go back and look at, but we want you to get help. If you're having trouble and you need help, it's a courageous thing to ask for help in this category. But I'd love to actually go through some things that we can talk about if we are struggling that will be helpful to us. We need right now more than ever to walk in the spirit, not the flesh, especially with our decisions. I'm not stealing Danny's thunder here, but we need to be a calming influence. If our friends and our loved ones are panicking, try to help them gain perspective. Instead of, creating more fear or false rumors, try to be that positive, uplifting influence for them. I think this is up here too. Number 2, look for online meetings. There are many of the recovery programs out there now, including the 12-step programs. They've moved to an online format. They're out there. You can find them. You can get into a group. If it's something that you were in a group before, you can find some support in that.
Hey, I just want to pause right there because the other night we have good friends and they said, hey, let's play a game online. And so they're self-isolated in LA. We're self-isolated here on the Central Coast, hours away from each other. Yeah. And they said, there's this website and you can go on it. And we all played a game of a game together, while we were hours apart. So there's even not just like AA meetings or Narcotics Anonymous meetings online. There's things that you can even do connection-wise online.
And we've listed those in number 3, or some of those. And there are so many creative ones out that I hadn't actually heard of that. That's amazing. Someone told me about charades. I had a lady tell me that they did a spa appointment together with a handful of friends, which I think is awesome. Next week, I'm going to have coffee with a handful of girlfriends. I think it's, there's a need, like we talked about, to have this connection with people. And even video chats is 70% decent connection. So it's a great thing, Stacey, to be able to reach out in that capacity. That's amazing.
Thank you so much, Diane. These are really helpful tools. I know even for my family, I come from a big family, 7 kids in my family. We have aging parents. So they're 83 and 87. And my mom and dad are kind of stuck there together, and they're kind of the high risk group, so nobody can go in and visit them. We decided to put together a Zoom with all the kids and then all the grandkids from all over the world. And so we had one Zoom meeting where mom and dad could see, their children and all their grandchildren. It was just a fun thing to do. So those are great. Thank you. I mean, people need positive, proactive ideas. And so we'll put that slide back up there again of ideas. And maybe at the end, we'll leave it up there so people can look at that. And Danny, why don't you tell us a little bit about your whole thing? As Diane said, like things like domestic abuse are on the increase, violence on the increase, the stress on marriage on the increase, fear everywhere. And you are a specialist in dealing with people that don't know how to get along. In fact, you've gone into families that are abusive, foster care families, and you've been in the thick of that. How do people, in your words, keep their love on? How do they love on purpose in these extreme scenarios?
Stacey, I think it just keeps, it's layer upon layer upon layer. It's just life. We just experience these clashes that show us who we are. Like, it always kind of cracks me up when a single person tells me how busy they are. I think, no, you have no idea how busy you can be, and it's just because that's just their edge. They've just lived to this edge, and then they get married and they can't believe that what happened. And then they have one baby, this one, and kaboom, the wheels come off, and they're fighting, and they want to leave, and they don't believe in the Lord anymore, and they're whatever. You're like, whoa, hey, take a breath, because pressure reveals what we've built inside. It's kind of like those little toothpick bridges that we built in high school. You had to put pennies or something on it and weigh it, and you just find out how good a job you did by the amount of weight that gets set on what you built. And so it's a little bit like when you wake up after you got married and you look over at her and you go, there you are. Oh my goodness, And that's what we're doing here. We're just seeing us, and it's a little shocking sometimes. I remember in high school we came into art class, and they had cut these blocks of clay off, this big block. It was a 40-pound block, and they cut these little chunks off. And the first thing we did is we sat around and we slammed these chunks of clay on the table. So the whole room is just clay hitting tables, just bam, bam. And I asked, what are we doing? Why are we doing this to this clay? What did this clay do? And they're just slamming it. And finally I said, why are we doing this? And the teacher says, we're knocking the air bubbles out of it. And I said, well, why? And she says, well, because what's about to happen is you're going to spend a bunch of time making this mug, or this vase or an ashtray. I don't even remember ashtrays, but that's all my mom ever got for me as a kid, was an ashtray. You made this really cool giraffe or whatever, and then we're going to put it in the kiln. We're going to put it in the oven. And when it goes in the oven, the clay cooks from the outside in. And it's like pressure. It's like temperature. It creates a reality for us. And we are now going to seal the outside, and then that air is going to reach that temperature, and your precious little project becomes a bomb. That air explodes trying to get out through all that you've developed around it, and now your ashtray just became a bomb, and it destroys all the other projects in the kiln around it.
I get the picture.
And so, watch over your heart, because that's where the air bubbles hide, right? And it's times like this that we get confronted with ourselves, and really all we can do for the most part, is just humble ourselves and clean up our mess. And then start the process of valuing relationships. Remember, my goal with this woman is for her to feel loved by me. Remember that my goal with this child is to feel loved by me. Remember, my job on this planet is to communicate God's love and to be a great representation of my loving Father. This is what I'm here to do. So all the other craziness that I have excuses for, as Diane was saying, we love to blame other people for how we behave. We love to, the reason I'm being disrespectful is because you were disrespectful. The reason I'm being so selfish is because you're so selfish. Oh, how do you like it when I treat you the way you treat me? And we say this crazy stuff. And then we give ourselves a pass for being a terrible representation of the Father. We give ourselves excuses. It's almost like we like to say that other people control us. Like you made me angry. You made me angry. Like there's a remote control. I tell you what, if I had a remote control and I could control you, I would never push the angry at me button. I would never do that. I would never say, oh yeah, here you go. Say mean things, be nasty, and let's set this on 3 days. Ready? Okay, there we go. No, that I would never do that. That's ridiculous, right? So other people don't control me, but the bad news is a lot of people never learn to control themselves. And this is the whole journey of being a free person, is I must learn to control myself in all my options because they're available to me and they're my responsibility. So the ones I choose, they were my choice. Nobody made me do anything. So a pandemic, a quarantine is going to reveal the work you've done up to now. And if you don't like what you see, you get to repent, you get to change, you get to humble yourself and ask God to help you. You get to start over and say, Lord, show me what it looks like to forgive, because I'm going to forgive. I'm going to follow you. I'm going to trust you. And I think, when we get to this spot, we end up with we end up with nowhere to hide. We can't get away from these people. I think the level of distraction we've been living at with the internet, with our phones, with video games, it's just unprecedented. There's so many places to hide. Well, much of that has been reduced by just not being able to leave the room, leave the house, go, I got to do this, got to do that, got to go here, got to go there, got to. No, you don't. And now you're being reset to put on display really the love that you have.
So, Danny, I just have a clarifying question. That's so profound. And I think that, most normal family interactions, I mean, when you can't control other people's reactions, but you can control your own. And that's the place to start and the place to live from, etc. But what about in a domestic violence situation? And I know you've worked in a lot of those where there's domestic abuse or foster care because there's parental abuse. In that scenario, what does the victim do? How do they keep their own hearts clean and carry on?
Well, people that are, in those conditions, there is no place to hide right now. That's for sure. That's, you call the police. It's great to hear that France is opening up hotel rooms for people to escape to, but those are really dangerous situations right now because those abusers are at an all-time high of control and punishment and anxiety. So that, hopefully the police are responding to those. I don't know, so many different situations, but that hopefully this is where you take notes of what you're not going to do moving forward. This is where you realize, okay, I will not live like this in the future. Instead of, just making excuses for why they were upset, why they were abusive, why they were terrorists, and just making a tomorrow that you don't want to live in.
Good. And so, how does this work together for even child to child? Okay, so you've got kids of different age groups, kids of different genders with different interests, and here they are stuck and they can't see their friends. How do you help as a parent your children keep their love on with each other?
Well, it's like I wake up one morning and I realize that I am $1 million in debt. I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I get out of this in a week? What do I do about this in a month? I'm like, well, I don't know what you do about it in a month or in a week, but I can tell you what you can do today to stop going into debt, and I can show you that the reason you're in debt is because of you. You're doing this. We like to think, well, the sky fell on me. Well, you have made a series of poor choices that have led to a situation that it's not impossible. God could wipe it out in a day. He sure could. But you better put yourself on a track. And I think one of the things that we find ourselves in is we've allowed so much disconnection, and we've allowed so much disrespect, and we've allowed so much personal irresponsibility. And I think those three things we got to go to work on as families to create a tomorrow, because the tension that we're living in right now is not caused by the virus or the pandemic or even the isolation. It's caused by our family's culture. One of the things I'm going to refer to at the end of what we're doing is my daughter. She runs the family arm of Loving on Purpose, and she's got I forget what you call it, a simulcast thing that they're doing. But it's basically how do you survive your kids during quarantine? It's very much about this, and so there's going to be a whole bunch of conversation, a whole bunch of really great stuff about what do we do about maybe not being happy with our family culture.
That's so good. And when I'm listening to you, I hear it constantly going back to personal responsibility. How did I create this family culture? How can I, here we are, it is what it is. But from this day forward, what can I personally do to begin, one small step for mankind kind of thing, and one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind, one small step in my individual life that would be a giant step for the family. So those are really good questions to ask, and I think that's amazing. I'd like Jazmin, who is as I said, an online school teacher, a mom of 5, has 5 kids at home right now as we speak. Practically, how do you create a culture where your kids get along and connect with each other? What do you do? What are practical steps that you do?
Well, we have a lot of practical things that we do. Some of the things are we actually even I get my kids to serve one another. So for instance, my boys, they are polar opposites. They do not like to do, the same things, but they, one, I just say, how can you serve your brother? And so one chooses to play the video game with his brother. And then the other son will choose to possibly play basketball, even though he hates sports. And so they learn how to serve one another. And I mean, I have so many little tips like this. But just even before I go into that, one of the things that I just want to focus on is I feel that this time is such an opportunity. And if we can just grasp this opportunity, it's we're going to lay some really good foundations for our family. Time is so valuable and we can't squander it. So what happens when in key times like this in our lives, when we're interrupted from our daily, the rat race of life. I mean, I have 5 kids. We do like 30 extracurricular activities. We hardly eat together. So now that our schedule is interrupted a little bit, there's so many little areas that we can work on together. We can practice gratitude and being thankful. And I try to catch those little foxes in our attitudes because we have the time, we're together. And so
how do you practice gratitude? That's a good point. I was reading somewhere recently that thankfulness is one of the great keys. If you just wake up and force yourself to be thankful, think of things you're thankful for. I was actually reading a whole article on this recently, that it changes the way your brain is wired and it makes your whole outlook and makes you more successful. Just that simple practice of gratitude. How do you do it with your children?
So often, almost on a daily basis, I'll even go around the room and I will ask them what they're thankful for. We'll pray together. We will, if they're looking at something from a negative perspective, we talk about, what can you see the good in this? What is God doing in this situation? And we even try to foster compassion. A sibling will do something that another sibling doesn't like. And we can bring up, why do you think they responded that way to you? What do you think was going on there? So they can even look at situations from their siblings' perspectives. And but anyways, even in homeschooling and teaching, I found that, even if you seem to be doing all the right things, that, your kids could be perfect angels at school, but when you try to teach them something, some counter will comes up, you could easily butt heads. And I mean, let's face it, no matter how many books I've read on the subject and, I've heard the teachers and I know all the things that I need to do, but sometimes it's hard, to respond in the right way. So when situations like that come up, I'm getting God on the scene. I'm crying out to God, Lord, help me, and so I love what Danny Silk said about that humility, forgiveness is key, but it just comes down to even day to day strengthening yourself in the Lord, and just letting him, put everything into place. Just give you supernatural wisdom for the day. And out of that place, as we love God, all those things that we want to do become more natural, and he just really helps us. So, different practical things that my children do are, say if you're in the house and it's really busy and chaotic and you need a little time for yourself, I often get older children to, read with little children or listen to my younger ones read, or they help one another. They help with schoolwork, give spelling tests, or some play with others and watch, others. And we just try to foster the connection and the relationship. But anyways, this time is just such a valuable time. I just would encourage parents to really embrace the season. Don't fight it. Really see it as a time that your family can be reset together. You might look back 10 years from now and see what a valuable time this was, that you might see that this season was the beginning that set a new entire course for your family. If you seize this opportunity to just pour into your children, pour into the relationships, and you might not get it right every time, but you're crying out for God's help and he's going to work in you. And so, yeah, that's what I love about it.
I like what you said. I have 5 kids too. Mine are all grown. 2 of them married, 1 engaged, almost married. But we didn't have when my kids were young, we didn't have a pandemic, but we did have a renewal. And so what happened with us is that we were thrown into the renewal when my kids were 7, 5, 3, 1, and 0. And Wesley and I ended up traveling all over the world. And I said, I'm not leaving my children. And so we took all 5 children with us, and we traveled up to 10 months a year all together, staying in one hotel room, sometimes 2 hotel rooms, in other people's basements, and little suites, or in their homes. And it was like it was more intense than self-quarantine, because oftentimes, we were on public display. People were everywhere around us. And I remember crying out to God and being so worried, like, my kids are going to be a mess. They have no stability. They have no this. And what I thought would be just a disaster for the family, ended up being the best thing I ever could do for the family, because they only had each other. They became each other's best friends. To this day, in their 30s and late 20s, they're each other's very close friends. So much so that I thought, when my boys got older, how would they find a wife, because they're so close to each other? They're each other's best friends, and all their friends are friends with each other. And, how can a woman ever get in here? And, it does find its level. Water finds its level. But it ended up pushing them together, because they had to play with each other in small rooms. They had to get along. And the big thing that you said is, I don't know how many times I said sorry. You can ask my kids. Mom is sorry for it, that mom lost it. Mom did this, mom, and the very fact that when we don't know everything and we make big mistakes, I think humility wins the day with your kids. And so now that my kids are adults, I say to them, like, was that like really traumatic for you? And no matter where my kids are at, they say, we had the greatest childhood. We got to do this. And so they ended up having a positive outlook on what could be to others a rather chaotic situation. And like you said, this can become positive, even though it's somewhat chaotic. So I want to just go back to Diane. And Diane, give us again, maybe put that slide up of resources that are available, books that you have, where people can take this further from things that you've learned. So if you could just, give a little synopsis, and then Danny as well, and Jazmin, if you have any final thoughts. Okay.
Yeah, that's awesome. Jazmin, awesome. I 100% agree with you. Stacey, we have a huge opportunity right here. Our toddlers are in the room, our teenagers are upstairs. As hard as it is, God is giving us this opportunity to draw close to family again. And I just want to say, give it away. Give away your resources, your effort, your time. If you have it in you, give it away to leave a legacy for your community, because there is nothing more rewarding right now than sharing this time with the people that you love and the people that you connect with. I love that story about your kids. That's amazing, because that's exactly what we want to hear from them, that they enjoyed it, that they knew each other, and they bonded. So that's wonderful. We have a Facebook page and a website that is actually under construction at this moment, but it's thefamilycollective.co. And what we have out there, probably a little like Danny's daughter, are some suggestions, ideas for how to deal with your spouse right now, how to deal with your children. Right now, we've got a couple video clips out about that, and you can find our resources on that Facebook page as well.
Awesome, because I think people need to take this further and, learn and study a little bit deeper. Even the Bible says, study to show yourself approved unto God, a workman that doesn't need. So it's really good to study and to take advantage of the resources. And Danny, tell us a little bit about what you have.
We have a simulcast coming up. We provided the information to you. Brian just told me the link doesn't work, so we'll get that fixed before you send it out. But if you could just send it out to all the people that have contacted you, or you're reaching so far, or make it available somehow. It's how to survive your kids during the quarantine. And then we also have a $10 offer, normally $75 for each of these courses, $10 a piece for the Life Academy courses. And they are all about keeping your love on. I think the people with a strategic plan right now are the ones who are going to win in this opportunity. Otherwise, you're going to view this as something you're stuck in. You're going to feel powerless. You're going to feel like a victim of what's happening, including your kids being right in front of you all day, every day. This is such a beautiful opportunity for you to shape something that normal life did not give you. Normal life was taking your kids away all day, every day. Jazmin mentioned, just having dinner is a challenge. And right now you're like, okay, we are just stacked on top of each other, unless this is actually an opportunity and you are executing. I mean, and I don't think it's just your family. I think it's also the community. I paid $100 for this cup of coffee at a local cafe today because that shop was a ghost town. I mean, I have a plan. This is the time to love big. These people are going to remember who was generous right now, who was encouraging right now, who took an extra effort to touch lives right now, because most people are shrinking back because of fear. And when fear is big, love is low. But when love is big, fear is low. And we just got to remember that fear casts out love as much as love casts out fear. What a great opportunity we do have.
That's amazing, Danny. I love that you paid $100 for a cup of coffee. That's an inspiration. Generosity. Was it a really good cup of coffee?
It's a great cup of coffee. I love this little shop too.
But
a week old, a cookie. I only ate half of it, but it's a week old. It was their last one. I just bought it too.
Good for you. But the thing is, you said the link that you have coming up, can they get it on your website? And what's the name of your website? How to survive your kids during quarantine. There are parents out there that need that. And so what is the name of your website?
It's lovingonpurpose.com. And what you're seeing right there is the Life Academy. Those are all going to $10 right now for this. And
so if anybody wants to take one of these courses, just $10, it's usually $75, just to help people, give them some resources right now. That's awesome, Danny.
Absolutely. And if you go to the Danny Loving on Purpose Instagram, that link is in that bio right there, and that'll take you to that simulcast as well. And it's simulcast because there's two. There's one that is going to the parents and one that's going to the kids. So we have two going on at the same time. It's just, we've never done anything like this before. It's going to be awesome.
So you're going into new things that you've never done before. It's stretching you. That's fantastic. So the family in quarantine, the kids can go in one room, the parents can go in another room, and they can come out of those two rooms like so connected because of all they've learned on that. Come on.
Exactly.
That's great. I love that. And Jazmin, anything from you that you want to, last minute thoughts, closing thoughts?
I just want to say that this is really basic, but if you set a schedule and keep it as a family, you're going to get way more accomplished if you're intentional. And our time is valuable. The season is important. So really just set your schedule. Every day I make my kids, get dressed, brush your hair, make your bed. They have lists that they need to accomplish, all their schoolwork. And then we just do life together. We eat together, they make meals, we cut vegetables and make soup, and they set the table, and we pray and we worship together most days. And just that schedule, that life, that day to day is going to bring you together. And and then also if you need ideas for just do interest-driven activities. So don't try to be like your friend or this person or that person. You can see a lot of different things on the internet, people posting what they're doing, but do what you like to do. Do what you're good at, what your children love. And then you will find joy in it, and you won't get frustrated trying to, do crafts. If you're really not crafty, don't go there. If you love to garden, then garden together, or just do what you guys are interested in. Don't try to be anyone that you're not. Just be yourself in this.
That's good advice, especially like I wish I would have heard that when I was younger. If you're not crafty, don't try to be crafty. I was always I thought I should do crafts with my kids. I couldn't do it. I was terrible at it. But anyway, also I have a little thing on hearing the voice of God. I have a Shiloh Global. This program is part of Shiloh Global. And one of the things that the Lord told me to do in this season, he said, Stacey, I don't want you to just prophesy with words. I want you to create models that prophesy. I want you to start bringing people together to tell their testimonies of how they're changing their business environment, their family environment, how they're changing government, whatever their calling is, how they're doing it, so that people that are called to do that can get inspiration. And the testimony itself actually gives ideas for people, and revelation comes out of what God has done before. That's why we read the Bible. We see, if God could do that, well, then he could do this. And so I'm also offering a little special right now, just $1 for the next 4 weeks, to just sign up and see if you like it, test it out, try it out. And I'm going to be doing a course on how to hear the voice of God in crisis. And because if the gift of prophecy, if you have the gift of prophecy, or, hearing God's voice, do it according to your faith. Faith is so key, having faith, and fear shuts down the voice of God in our life. And so we're going to be talking about that, having 4 programs in a row just on that in the next bit. And so I just want, there's so many resources available to all of us. I want to thank you guys so much. I have learned a lot here, and I am going to just go out and do something really nice for Wesley, because we got to just walk towards, even in the middle of the busyness of doing these programs, we're actually kind of busier than we've ever been. And so, but you've been inspiring to me, and I just want to pray a blessing on families. Danny, could you just pray a blessing over the family?
Absolutely. Father, thank you for just loving us so well. Thank you that it's your love that chases away fear, chases away anxiety, chases away hopelessness. And I pray, Lord, for just fresh connections, heart to heart with you today, so that we can walk into other relationships carrying your presence, that we can be reminded of who you are and how much you want these people to know who you are. Lord, help us to first love you with all our heart, and then love those around us and love ourselves in that order for your glory. In Jesus' name, thank you, Lord.
Amen. Thank you guys so much. This was awesome, super helpful. And here you are calling from all over the world, and we're, together helping people. So just want to bless you guys, and we'll talk to you soon. Bless you. Okay. Bye-bye. And Brian, could you just put that helpline slide on just as we close, just for a minute, so people that might need some help with those helplines that are in real crisis, that would be amazing. And you can look at some of the resources that are available there. Yeah, disaster distress, crisis text line, national suicide prevention, national domestic violence hotline, coronavirus up-to-date information. Those are just some resources that are available to anybody, anywhere. And if you need them, just take notes right now. And anyway, God bless you so much. Thank you for everything. And talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.